Hello and welcome once again to the channel where we talk everything property related. My name is Peter Edwards. Today's topic is, are landlords fat cats who are out there to exploit the housing market and make it difficult for young people to get onto the housing market? Now, you may think, why are we even talking about this? Who thinks landlords or property investors are fat cats? Well, you would be surprised because at how many people actually do think like this. All you need to do is just look at some of the comments in social media, and even some of the legislations and policies that are put through by government normally actually do tend to favor more tenants and make it difficult for landlords to actually operate profitably. So to begin our discussion, let's look at one of the first accusations that are thrown at property investors, and that is that they go and buy all the properties and then make it so difficult for anyone to get onto the housing ladder. Is that true? Well, for one, property investors normally actually buy the houses that nobody wants. For them to make a profit, they always buy the houses that are either derelict, unoccupied, or in such a bad state that they need a total renovation. Whereas people who want to get onto the housing ladder, they would normally want to get a house that's already done up, beautiful, and just ready to move in, because most of them, to be honest, don't have much of that experience in refurbishments, and they don't have all the context and the means to refurbish a house, unless obviously they got family or they're interested in doing that. But generally, most young people or anyone that's just getting onto the property ladder just wants a lovely house just to move into it and take it from there. Whereas property investors, in order for them to make a profit, they have to buy these houses that, as we said, nobody really wants, the smelly houses, the not so lovely houses. And they then make these houses beautiful, and they could either sell them to these people that want to get onto the property ladder, or they rent them out. And that's adding them to their portfolio. And the other accusation, obviously, is that property investors just are only out to make a profit, and they're not doing anything good for society. Well, if you look at it this way, there's some areas, right, where you find lots of homes which are abandoned, boarded up, gardens are not well tended, broken windows, because basically some of these homes are derelict. Now, when property investors buy these homes, they do them up, they refurbish them, and that actually brings the area up again because people move into these homes, and that then solves the issues that they might have, because there could be like social problems that could have been there as a result of these empty buildings. Lots of things could have been happening there. Some of these buildings could have been used for criminal behavior, drug taking, or lots of other antisocial things. Whereas now when decent families now move into these homes, this then actually can actually bring an area up again. So that's another good thing that property investors do that not many people are actually aware of. Then, of course, we cannot forget that property investors also look for people who actually have problems, people who need to sell their houses quickly because they have got some issue that they need solving urgently. For example, people could be going through a divorce. Some people may be in the process of losing their homes due to foreclosure. And so they actually really need to sell their homes urgently. And they may not be able to wait for anybody who might just take months to buy that house. So when property investors come and they offer the right price, though of course it may be lower than the market value, but the price is just enough to solve the seller's problems, that is sometimes all that is required. The seller is happy, the property investor is happy, the problem has been solved. Now, of course, there's always two sides. There are sometimes unscrupulous property investors. These are people that do take advantage of situations, but that is not normally the case because basically nobody is forced into selling their home to anybody. However, one thing that can be said sometimes about property investors is they can actually fill up streets with lots of tenanted properties, and that sometimes may not be a good thing. It can actually bring down the value of a street, because if you find a street or an area with mostly tenanted properties with less home buyers in that particular area, it's actually proven that those areas actually take long to gain value or appreciation, because nobody really wants to live there. Because when houses are rented out, the tenants don't really look after those houses the way owner-occupiers would look after those houses, because they know it's not their home, so they're just living there. And so you'd find sometimes those houses, if they're not maintained properly by the property investor and the tenant, then those houses, they start deteriorating, the streets start deteriorating, values go down, and obviously then that antisocial behavior comes in again, depending obviously on the type of tenants as well that they put in. If those tenants are not properly screened, they're not bringing in the proper tenants, then it can bring an area down. That's why it's very important for property investors to, when they are investing in property, to do proper checks on the tenants, that then aim for a certain type tenants as well. And some argument against property investors is also, especially when it comes to like houses of multiple occupation, you find that because maybe what used to be a family home is now converted into a house which homes 5 different people, to 5 households in effect. And so maybe these 5 different people that live there have got 5 cars, 4 cars. Then they could maybe start taking up the parking spaces in that road. And also some of the limited resources that are available in that area all are now taken up, because there are now more people than normally would have been if those houses were just like single-let properties. So yes, in that case, sometimes people can then make that argument that property investors are just fat cats who are just only out to look after their own pocket, but they're not really concerned about the society in general. But that's not normally the case, because you see, property investors actually do a lot more for the community and for society by providing better homes and by making places which were formerly derelict more habitable, as well as bringing more houses into the market. It's no secret that there is a housing shortage in England. Every year the government is trying to build more homes, but the population just keeps on growing. So by property investors going out there, buying all these homes which are just standing there, derelict, or some of them being unloved and in a terrible state, when they buy these houses and they house families, people who would have been struggling to find accommodation elsewhere, they are actually helping society. They're bringing in communities together again in areas which were maybe neglected. So it's unfair really to class property investors as fat cats who are only out there looking after themselves. But I'd also be interested in hearing what you have to say. So if anyone has any things to add or any arguments they'd like to bring forth, I'd like to see it in the comments. So thank you once again for listening to the channel. I'm Peter Edwards, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye. And remember, knowledge is king. So invest in knowledge so that you can invest wisely in property.